या देवी स्तूयते नित्यं विबुधैर्वेदपारगैः सा मे वसतु जिह्वाग्रे ब्रह्मरूपा सरस्वती। नमामि नारायणपादपङ्कजं करोमि नारायणपूजनं सदा वदामि नारायणनामनिर्मलं स्मरामि नारायणतत्त्वमव्ययम्. Invoking the grace of Goddess Saraswati, Guru Vairappan, Mahaperival and Guru Parampara, we are now entering into Dashaka 9, verse number 1. Before that, I would like to also make some notes about the observations I made in the last session. Some correction needs to be done there also. I said that Uddhava is the son of Devabhaga actually. Krishna's father is Vasudeva. Vasudeva's brother is Devabhaga. Devabhaga's son is Uddhava. Last time I mentioned as Krishna's father's brother, but it should be corrected as Krishna's father's brother's son. Uddhava's father is Devabhaga, who is the brother of Vasudeva, Krishna's father. Hence Krishna is called Vasudevan. There's something to be noted. And I also mentioned about it should be about the Brahma Kalpa as the first day. It should be understood as Brahma Kalpa. First year, first day. And the 50th year, last day, is not Padma Kalpa, Padma Kalpa. A slip, and earlier also called Padma Kalpa only, but last time I mentioned by mistake as Padma Kalpa. It's a Tadita Pada. So first day is Brahma Kalpa, and the 50th year last day is Padma Kalpa. This to be noted. It is also a very interesting note that the Uddhava's Guru is Brihaspati, and Guru and Vayu did the Pratishta. And the Pratishta was done of the idol which is worshipped by Uddhava. There is a reference about this in the Bhagavata also, and there is also reference in the Gurubhada Puresha Pancharatna Stotra composed by Upanyasa Chakravarti Brahmasri Anantaram Dikshidhar. In the last sloka he says, Nityanna Dhatraicha Mahisurebhyaha Nityam Divistair Nishipujitaya Matracha Pitracha Tadodhavena Sampujitaya Astu Namo Namaste. Worship Matar, Devaki, Vasudeva and Uddhava. It's mentioned this, so the reference is made there. And the term Vatalaya also is very suggestive. The Vata means the Vayu, also the Prana. The Pratishta is done by the Vayu, and Guru of course is the Brihaspati, who is Uddhava's Guru. All these things we should keep in mind so that we can understand this subject with greater devotion. So the Vayu represents the Chit aspect of the Parabrahma Brahman. Chit means consciousness, awareness, which is knowledge, that is the Guru. And Chit also means Chetanatvam, Chaitanyam, that is the Vayu aspects. So the Vayu Chaitanyam and the consciousness or knowledge, which is the Guru, both are combined as the Parabrahma Sarupa, which we see as a Saguna Iswara, as Guru Vairappan. We should see in this manner, so that we get a greater understanding of the absolute reality. So this much I would like to mention. And the word Vatalaya is suggestive because I said Vatalaya because Vayu has done the Pratishta, the Guruvayur temple also is called Vatalaya. And it's also very interesting to note that Bhattatripad also, who took upon the Vataroga from his Guru, also had the Vataroga. So he was suffering from the paralysis of the leg, that is Vataroga, due to Vata. So Bhattatri, who had Vataroga, came to Vatalaya and invoked the grace of Guru Vairappan. It was Guru Vairappan's sankalpam that Bhattatri should compose an Naraniyam. Bhavat Prerana Yeva Bhuvan. He has mentioned this, he will mention this in the later Dasakas, that everything is your Prerana. That Narayaniam is not composed by me. It is composed by Guru Vairappan himself, and I am only an instrument who has, as a devotee, could get the blessing of the Lord to present this Narayaniyam before the Lord and invoke his grace. And ultimately got cured of the Vataroga. So Bhattatri, who had the Vataroga, went to Guru Vatalaya and got cured of the Vataroga. That way it can be seen also. Now we will go into the verse number 1. Dasakam number 9. Sthitatsa kamalodbhava tabhinaba panke ruhe kutas svitidamam budhau uditamityanalokayan tatikshana kutuhalat pratidisham vibrittananaha chaturvatanatamagad vikadashta drishtyam bujam. Once more. Sthitasya kamalodbhava tabahinabi pange ruhe kutas svititamam budhau uditamityanalokayan tadikshana kutuhalat pratidisham vibrittananaha chaturvatanadamagad vigasadashta drishtyam bujam. We'll go now to the paribhasha, the literal meaning of the verse. Saha kamalodbhavaha means that lotus born Brahma. Tava nabi panke ruhehi, in thy navel lotus itself. The navel is lotus itself. Kamalaiva nabihi. Sthitaha remaining. Ambudau in the ocean. Idam this lotus. Kutaha svit from where indeed uditam came up. Iti thus. Analokayan not understanding. Tadikshana kutuhalad out of eagerness to see it means the origin of it, origin of the lotus. Pradidisham vibrittananaha turning his face in all direction. Bikasa dashta drishtyam bujam with 8 eyes like full-blown lotuses. Chadur vadanatam agad became endowed with 4 faces. So that lotus-born Brahma, that is Padmaja, remaining in thy navel lotus itself, not being able to know from where the lotus emerged in the ocean, and being eager to know its origin, turned his face in all directions, and thereby got 4 faces with 8 eyes like full-blown lotuses. This is the literal meaning of the verse. Here the Lord Brahma is presented with 8 eyes and 4 faces, as he could not look at all directions with 2 faces and 2 eyes. Brahma 4 faces, 8 eyes, turning the head, lotus, manifestation of the lotus, all this represents the grosser form. Symbolically, they have something else to convey, which I thought we'll share in this session now. The lotus represents in the Kundalini Shakti Yoga, the Sahasrara sender, as depicted in the Kundalini Yoga, where there is a union of Jiva and Brahman, Jiva and Ishvara, or Shiva Shakti Aikyam, however may put it. Brahma is looking around for the origin of the lotus, can be compared to a Jignasu seeking knowledge of the absolute reality. As Jignasu puts all in efforts, curiously wants to know the reality, Brahma also not knowing from where the lotus originated means he was in darkness for some time and he was trying to find out the origin of the lotus. Lotus symbolically represents the knowledge. 4 faces represent the Jagrat, Swapna, Sushupti and Turiya Avastha. Jagrat means waking, Swapna means dream, Sushupti means deep sleep, and Turiya is the state where after getting the knowledge one attains Sakshatkara or oneness with the Parabrahma or Ishvara. 8 eyes represent the 8 directions. Like we know the 4 directions, north, south, west, east, purva, paschima, dakshina, uttara, and also the corners. There's Agneya, Nairita, Vayava, Ishana, the 4 directions. So 8 directions are covered there. They also represent the 8-fold yoga sadhanas, which can see as Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana, and Samadhi. Time constraint, I don't want to go into details of this. I am only giving the symbolic understanding of all these expressions mentioned in this verse. Directions, dik, also represent the limitlessness of the absolute reality. A spiritual seeker has to go antarmukha or turn inwards to understand the limitless reality. Brahma also in search of origin of the lotus, that means knowing from where it started, wanted to understand the source, origin, the knowledge itself. He had to turn inwards, and he also passed through all the 4 states. That is why he became Chaturanana and turned inward and got the Chaturanana and 8 eyes, which as I told earlier mentioned, represents the 8-fold sadhanas. This also indicates indirectly or asserts the fact that any spiritual seeker, when he becomes introverted or turns inwards and does sadhana with full commitment to know the absolute reality, he realizes the truth on his own and becomes enlightened. The Brahmaji also, when he got the 4 faces and the 8 eyes, became enlightened and was happy. This is the symbolic bhavartha of this verse. We'll go into the second verse in the next session. Narayana Akila Guru Bhagavan Namaste. Hari Om. Bhave bhave yatha bhakti padayostava jayate tata krusha devesha natastam no yata prabha nama sankirtanam yasya sarva bhava pranasana pranamo dukhasamnam tam namami harim param. Narayana Akila Guru Bhagavan Namaste. Ya devi stuyate nityam vibhudair veda paragaihi same vasatu jihvagre brahma rupa saraswati. Namami Narayana padapankajam karomi Narayana pujaram sada vadami Narayana nama dharmalam Smarami Narayana Tattvam Abhyayam. Invoking the grace of Goddess Saraswati, Guru Ayappan, Mahaperiva and Guru Parampara, we now continue our discussion on Dashakam number 9. We completed the verse number 1 in the last session. This Dashakam 9 is titled as, 2 things are coming here, Brahmanas Tapaha, the tapas of Brahma, and also Jagat Srishti Prakara Varnanam, the description of the creation or the process of creation. Verses 1 to 9 talk about the Brahma's tapas and his quest for knowing the source of the Creator, and the Brahma's creation is covered in the 10th verse. Now we will move on to the verse number 2. Maharnava bidhurnidam kamalameva tatkevalam vilokya tatupashrayam tabatanum tanalokayan kayesha kamalodare mahadi nissahayo hyaham kutasvidada ambujam samajaniti chintamakad. Maharnava bigurnitam kamalameva tatkevalam vilokya tatupashrayam tabatanum tunalokayan kayesha kamalodare mahati nissahayo hyaham kutasvididam ambujam samajaniti chintamagad. Kutasvididam ambujam samajaniti chintamagad. I will read once more. Maharnava bigurnitam kamalameva tatkevalam vilokya tadupashrayam tabatanum tunalokayan kayesha kamalodare mahati nissahayo hyaham kutas svididam ambujam samajaniti chintamagad. The literal meaning of the verse: Maharnava bigurnidam, quivering in the infinite ocean, that is of the causal waters. Tat kamalam, that lotus. Kevalam eva, by itself, without support. Vilokya, seeing, Tadupashrayam, its support, Tava Tanumtu, thy body, Na Lokyan, not seen, Mahati Kamalodare, inside this huge lotus, Nissahayaha, he, alone, without any support, Eshaha, Aham Kaha, who am I? Idam Ambujam, this lotus, Kutaha Svit Samajani, from what has it come? Iti Chintam Agad, he was immersed in such thoughts. Seeing only the lotus, which was quivering in the causal waters, and not seeing thy body, which was its support, Brahma began to think, who am I, sitting alone and helpless in this huge lotus? From what has this lotus come? Here the scenario depicted is in the great ocean, the Mahasamudra, which is called the causal water. Only lotus was there, nothing else, and which was shaking, quivering. Brahma could not see the root of the lotus, see the body, which was its support. Because Brahma came out from the lotus, but he could not see the body. The Karnajalam, of course, is the limitless, and Lord Vishnu, who is the cause, Ananta, is also limitless. Therefore, the lotus that emerges also, she is limitless, obviously. Here the lotus symbolizes the universe. Karnajalam is the Paramatma Summa Brahman, which is effulgent. Brahma is in the lotus and is located in the Nabi of the Mahavishnu, which is the Kendra, the Bodha, the consciousness. The state of Brahma is explained here, that Brahma was in a helpless state in this huge lotus because he could not see the body and he knows that it was its support. And he started thinking, who am I? And then he wanted to also know from where this lotus has come. This symbolizes also the vichara of any sadhak. An ordinary jiva also, when he is born in this world, caught up in the ignorance, identifying with the body, mind and self, and seeing himself as the limited body, and not knowing the Paramatma Surupa or the true self, he asks, who am I? Am I this body? From where this body has come? And what is the ultimate destination? From where I should reach? What is the ultimate goal in life? These are the questions of a spiritual sadhak. And Brahma also, being also a sadhak in the initial stage, because he has to gain the absolute knowledge from Ishvara later for creation, and also know the nature of Brahman. So in the initial stage, Brahma was like this jiva. The helplessness is there because a jiva also is helpless because we are caught up in samsara, caught up in the cycle of birth and death, not knowing the source, not knowing the nature of the reality. We perform karmas which only create more bondage, because all these karmas are kamyartha or for a particular result, for not knowing the reality, and therefore they create punya and papas. Because of the punya and papa, we are caught up in the cobweb of samsara, and we are always in the cycle of birth and death. And this helplessness is not there, and it keeps on continuing. And in samsara, we are moving from one experience to another, which is all only from one sukha to dukkha, dukkha to sukha. Ultimately, we are not able to gain the absolute happiness which we look for. And therefore, this helplessness is there, and there is always the urge to know, how do I come out of this samsara? How do I free myself from this limited nature and become the limitless Brahman I am? How do I know it? So this urge all along remains. But being caught up in samsara, the ahankara vritti being more prominent, we tend to ignore and we give more importance to the body. So dehoham bhava dominates over the jivoha first. So the Vedanta Shastra says, first you must come out of devoham body. The ahankara, mahankara, mamakara has to go out and come out of this body sense and come to the jivaha, aham jivaha. And then start making inquiring, what is this jiva? From where it has come? What is its ultimate destination? Who is the supporter of this jiva? And what is my goal in life? Am I really separate from Paramatma, etc.? How do I get liberation? These kind of queries I must have. A true seeker has. So in Vedanta they use the word what is called a jignasu, a seeker. Brahma is like a jignasu. Jignasu means the word jnatum icha means jnana icha, means icha to desire to know. It becomes a jignasu only when my desire is to know myself, not anything else. I am not interested in knowing about the world or things in the world. I am not interested in the enjoyments in the world. All my interest is only in knowing myself. If that is my predominant or the only desire, then from jnana icha I become jignasu, means it becomes a jignasu. So jnatum ignya jignasa, jignasa yasya saha, one who has got the jignasa is called jignasu. So a spiritual sadhak has to be a jignasu if he has to know the ultimate truth and be free from the cycle of samsara and gain moksha or freedom from samsara. If he has to gain that, he has to be a jignasu. So the jignasu state is depicted in this verse, where Brahma also is an helpless. Like a jiva is also helpless because he wants to know, but he is not able to see the root. And he is like a jignasu. He is only interested in knowing that who am I and from where this lotus has come. This much is this verse covers. Now we will go on to the verse number 3. Verse number 3. Amushya ki sarorugaha kimapi karanam sambhavet itisma kritanishchayaha sakaluna larindradvana swayoga balavidyaya samabarudhavan praudhadihi tvatiyamatimohanam natu kalebaram drishtavan. Amushya hi saroruhaha kimapi karanam sambhavet itisma kritanishchayaha sakaluna larindradvana swayoga balavidyaya samavarudhavan praudhadihi tvatiyamatimohanam natu kalebaram drishtavan. We'll go to the meaning paribhasha. Amushya sarorugaha, for this lotus, kimapi karanam, some cause, sambhavethi, there must be certainly be, itisma krita nishchayaha, having decided thus, praudadihi sa, he Brahma of mighty intellect, khalu indeed, swayoga bala vidyaya, with the power of his knowledge combined with yoga, Nala Randradvana, through the hollow in the lotus stem, Samava Rudhavan, descended, Ati Mohanam, Twadiyam Kalebaram tu, but thy most enchanting form, Na Drishtavan, did not see. Having decided that there must certainly be some cause for this lotus, Brahma of mighty intellect descended through the hollow in the lotus stem by the power of his knowledge combined with yoga, but did not see thy most enchanting form. So this is in continuation of the verse 2. Brahma continues his search for knowing from where this lotus has come. So since he had yogic powers, Brahma, using his yogic powers, he moved downwards through the stem. So it is depicted, only the subtle form can traverse in this manner. But although he went down, he could not see the bottom, because as there are only branches but no seed. Only when you see the seed, you can see the cause. But he noticed that he could not see anything. He could not see the stem. He could not see the seed. He could see only more branches of the lotus, and therefore he was again wonderstruck. So he did not know what to do, and he could not see his yogic Lord's enchanting form. This reminds us of an analogy in Bhagavad Gita, in Purushottama Yoga, in chapter 15, verse number 1, where Krishna talks about the Ashwattha Vriksha. In the Vibhuti Yoga, Krishna says, I am the Ashwattha Vriksha in the Vrikshanam. Vrikshanam aham Ashwattha Vriksha eva. So Ashwattha Vriksha is comparable to this. We will continue discussion on this in the next session. Bhave bhave yata bhaktihi padayostava jayate tata kurushva devasya natastam nojata prabhu nama sankirtanam yasya sarva bhava pranasanam pranamo dukkha samanaha tam namami harim param. Hari Om. Narayana Akila Guru Bhagavan Namaste. Hari Om. Ya Devi Stuyate Nityam Vibhudhair Veda Paragaihi Same Vasatu Jihvagre Brahma Rupa Saraswati. Namami Narayana Pada Pankajam Karumi Narayana Pujanam Sada Vadami Narayana Nama Nirmalam Smarami Narayana Tattvam Abhyayam. Invoking the grace of Goddess Saraswati, Guru Vairappan, Mahaperival and Guru Parampara. We are now on Dasakam 9, verse number 3. We completed in the last session. And the Bhavartha we are going to go into now. It was mentioned in the verse number 3 that Brahma, having decided there must be some cause for the emergence of this lotus, he descended through the hollow in the lotus stem. That is by using his yogic power and with limited knowledge. But he did so, but he could not see the root. He could not see the cause because the lotus was covered with leaves. Here the mention is not of the ordinary lotus, this is a divine lotus. I mentioned last time that there is an imagery comparison of this with the Ashwattha Vriksha in Bhagavad Gita, chapter number 15. In chapter number 10, about the Vibhuti Yoga, Lord Krishna says, Vibhuti Yoga talks about the glory of the Lord. Lord says, I am in this, I am in that. So that glory is being talked about. There in verse number 26, he mentioned, Ashwattha Sarva Vrikshanam Devarshinam Cha Naradaha. He said, I am the sacred Ashwattha Vriksha, the fig tree, we can translate it, among all the trees. And among the Devarshi, celestial sages, I am Narada. He has given a special status to Ashwattha tree here. In all the Vrikshas, I am the Ashwattha Vriksha. And the Ashwattha tree made famous by the Shruti and the Gita symbolizes the entire samsara. The twigs of the Ashwattha tree are used in the Vedic fire rituals, and the tree itself is worshipped by people who want children. In fact, the Margosa tree, which grows along with Ashwattha, is also considered as its wife, and all those getting married and wanting children perform the marriage of these two trees. So among the trees, Ashwattha is the most sacred. And therefore, Lord says that among all the trees, I am the Ashwattha, every part of which is worshipped. And he talks of rishis, the Deva rishis, Narada. The word Narada is very significant here. Naram dadati di Narada. Naram here means the Brahmajnanam, Atmajnanam. The one who gives Atmajnanam is Narada. You must have heard that Narada always says every time, Narayana, Narayana, Narayana. Narayana is the one who knows that I am the cause of the Jagat. And I am the one to be known, and the one who knows also that everything is Brahma itself. So that Narayana is Narada. Therefore, among the Deva Rishis, Narada is considered to be the one amongst the Deva Rishis. Having mentioned that in verse number 10, then in verse number 15, talking about Purushottama Yoga, Lord further reinstates the glory of the Ashwattha Vriksha, where he says, Urdhva Moola Matashakam Ashwattam Prahurabhyayam Chandamsi Yasya Parnani Yastam Vedasa Vedabit. Urdhva Moola means the roots are above. Adashakam means branches are below. Ashwatam, iti Ashwatam is considered. And the Vedas, the Parnani, the leaves are called the Chandas, the Vedas. So the one who knows that he is a knower of the Veda. That is the imperishable Ashwatha. The Ashwatha tree is called imperishable, which has roots is above, branches below, and the Vedas are the leaves. The one who knows is a knower of the Veda. Here, as we said here, any tree is likened to a samsara, but Ashwatha tree, the uniqueness of the Ashwatha tree here is that the word Ashwatha itself is very striking. Shvaha means tomorrow, Staha means Stitaha means stay, means does not stay. So the word Ashwatha means that which does not stay tomorrow. The botanical name of the tree is called the Ficus religious or something like that. The fig tree we can call it. In our local language we say Pipala tree is called the Ashwatha tree. Now like the Ashwatha tree, the samsara also is that which will not be in the same form tomorrow. It is constantly changing, relating to the root. The base is Adhisthana, Brahman, which undergoes no change. Though it is Ashwatha, means keeping on changing, it is also Abhyayam, imperishable, just keeps on changing, does not die away, because the names and forms goes on changing. The leaves keep on coming and dying. So this manifestation and unmanifestation is there. So it can bend. So even in the case of a jiva, this kind of changes are there, and it can end only with reference to an individual once the ignorance of the root is removed. Otherwise, it is abhyayam, imperishable. That's why it's called imperishable. So although it is samsara, which can have an end, but it is endless because it keeps on changing. So this samsara is likened to a tree for a number of reasons. Even though we do not generally see the roots of a tree, we appreciate that it is standing because of its roots. We infer the existence because of the observation of samsara. We see only the effect, the karya, and not the cause, karana, and infer the existence of the cause from the presence of its effect. So, therefore, the cause not being known to me is lost within myself beyond time and space. As the tree has roots which are not seen, so does the world whose roots are hidden in the seer. This is the significance of this. Shankara says the root is above because it is even more subtle than time. Time is not perceptible as an object, but it is only appreciated by the mind. So here we are dealing with something that is even more subtle than the mind, the very basis or cause, karanam of the mind, and everything within time and space. In that sense, it precedes the creation as its cause, and therefore it is above urdhvam. Further, it is eternal or nitya. As long as the root survives, the tree, even though felled, will regenerate. This is significance. And therefore, the tree of samsara is a non-eternal effect rising out of its cause, which related to is eternal nitya. So from the root it can come again and again. So while the entire creation is anitya, its root is nitya. It is also urdhvam because it is limitless, mahatvad. Brahman with Maya Shakti, the cause of this entire world, is the root of the tree of samsara. This is to be understood in this manner. Now while the root is above, its branches are below, adaha. All the physical and subtle elements, which you call it in the world creation, are the branches, shakaha. And they are below, adaha, because they are within time and space. The entire samsara, the creation is in time and space. That is why it can be compared to the shaka. The foliage of a tree is an important protective covering and source of vitality. If you clip on clipping the leaves, the tree will die. Similarly, the tree of samsara has the Vedas, which is called Chandamsi, to protect and sustain the jiva. By providing various injunctions for karmas, the Vedas nourish the existence of the jiva. So the Vedas spoken of here are the Rik, Yajus and Sama, since they provide knowledge of the means and ends connected with rituals. But Vedanta is omitted, because to sustain samsara, you need only karmas. Vedanta will destroy it. So even those who have no knowledge of the Vedas perform actions and perpetuate samsara. So they contain knowledge of the most auspicious karmas, and therefore these Vedas, the Karmakanda of the Vedas, are referred to here as the leaves, because they sustain the samsara. So Vedas represents all the means and ends, and they do not release you from samsara, but rather protect and perpetuate samsara like the leaves of this Ashwatha tree. Through knowledge of means and ends, the jiva uses the various means prescribed above to achieve ends and gathers punya. But here we should understand one more thing. The same karmakanda of the Vedas can also be used for gaining moksha in the form. So instead of doing this sakama dharma anushtana, we can do the nishkama dharma anushtana, where I am not seeking anything for worldly enjoyments. In the form artha and kama. Artha means the wants, kama means the sensual pleasures. But I am seeking for my purification of the mind, so that with a purified mind I am able to gain atma jnanam or gain freedom from samsara. So in a larger sense it can be do that. But as long as it's a sakama, it is like the leaves of the asvattha tree. I gain punya and papa. With punya and papa I keep on taking birth and dying from one janam to another janam. This keeps on coming. So as the leaves keep the tree alive, the karmas keep the tree of samsara going. A tree, however, can be felt, as we said, only with the knowledge. So once the knowledge is removed, the tree goes away. This is the significance. We also, there's a reference, Shruti also uses this illustration in Kathopanishad. Samsara is described as a tree with its roots above in Brahman and branches below within the time-space framework. It has no beginning, anadi, because it is cyclical. Even it becomes unmanifest at the time of dissolution. Like a tree in a seed, it manifests once again. So in his commentary on this verse, Shankara also cites the use of the imagery in the Mahabharata. There it says that it is produced from the unmanifest, because of whose grace alone it has risen up. Like a tree is born from its roots and sustained by it, this tree of samsara not only arises from, but also is sustained by Ishvara, without whom it has no existence. The imagery is, the trunk is the intellect, buddhi and its apertures are the physical aspects of the sense organs, the branches are the 5 elements, and the various sense objects are the leaves. Dharma and adharma, meaning punya and papa, are its flowers, which gives rise to the fruits in the form of pleasure and suffering, called sukha and dukkha. As the birds live in the tree, the jiva depends entirely upon this tree of samsara. Its original root is Brahman, so its expression. It is non-separate from Brahman. Not only is one tree Brahman, there is the whole forest of trees which is Brahman, and the one who roams in the forest of Brahman is also Brahman. Therefore, the tree of samsara is to be destroyed by the sword of knowledge. Then one gains the state of reveling in oneself, from which he does not return. So all the 3 principal sources of Brahma Jnanam uses this illustration. In Shruti we see it in the Kathopanishad, in Smriti here we see in the Gita, and Shankara has quoted the Itihasa Purana Mahabharata in which it appears. So this is covered in all the 3, and we see also in the Narayanam also, in verse number 3, indirectly there is a imagery connected to this, where Brahma, going through the stem of the lotus, could not see the root because the bottom is covered with leaves and the root is above and he could not see. So this verse is be seen. We will now continue on verse number 4 in the next session. Bhave bhave yatha bhaktihi padayostava jayate tata kurushva devesha natastvam no yata prabhu nama sankirtanam yasya sarva bhava pranachanam pranamo dukkha samanaha tam namami harim param narayana akila guru bhagavan namaste hari om. Ya devi stuyate nityam vibhudair veda paragaihi same vasad jihvagre brahma rupa saraswati namami narayana pada pankajam karomi narayana pujanam sada vadami narayana namadharmalam smarami narayana tattvamabhyayam. Invoking the grace of Goddess Saraswati, Guru Ayyappan and Mahaperiyava, another Guru Parampara, we are now entering into verse number 4 of Dasakam 9. Tatas sakalanalika vivaramargago margayan prayasya satavatssaram kimapi naiva samdrishtavan nirvritya kamalodare sukanishanna ekagradhihi samadhi balamadadhe bhavadanugrahaikagrahi. Tatas sakalanalika विवरमार्गगो मार्गयन् प्रयस्य शतवत्सरं किमपि नैव संदृष्टवान् निर्वृत्य कमलोदरे सुखनिषण्ण एकाग्रधीः समाधिबलमादधे भवदनुग्रहैकाग्रही. ततः then सकल नालिका विवर मार्गगः. Vivaram here means hole. Going through all the holes in the stem. Margayan, searching and searching. Shata vatsaram prayasya. Even after striving for 100 years like this, kimapi na sandrishtavan eva. He did not see anything at all. Nivritya, coming back, kamalodare, inside the lotus, sukha nishannaha, sitting comfortably, ekagradihi, with one-pointed intellect, bhavad anugrahaikagrahi, desiring solely thy grace, samadhi balam adade. He practiced, or he was in samadhi, firm samadhi, samadhi balam adade. That is, he was in samadhi, concentration on you. Literal meaning. Then going through all the holes and searching, he could not see anything at all, even after many years of strenuous effort. Coming back, he sat comfortably inside the lotus with one-pointed intellect, desiring nothing but thy grace, and was practiced firm meditation on thee. This is the literal meaning. Here the idea is that meditation, that is concentration of the mind and the senses, alone can lead to self-realization. The withdrawal aspect of the Ashtanga Yoga is also stretched here, and then Dhyanam is also talked about here. It is mentioned here that Brahma's inquiry downward, means he went down to the through the stem to the lower part, did not yield any result, symbolizing that the absolute reality cannot be perceived at the gross level. If you were to see in terms of Kundalini Shastra or Kundalini Yoga, these lower centers, which are Mooladhara and Swadhisthana, and the Kundalini Shakti traveling through the Sushumna Nadi, rising above this from and entering into the Manipuraka towards the subtle reality is represented here. That the Brahma, instead of going downwards, has to move upwards. I mean, the Manipuraka forms the Nabi aspect of this subtle reality, the starting point. All the holes in the stem of the lotus finally merge with the lotus. All these holes redirect the steps for, or represent the step for Dhyana Samadhi. Lotus bud represents the Dhyana Samadhi, and the blossomed lotus is synonymous with Prajna or self-enlightenment. This is the subtle meaning. Brahma, not knowing that he was going downwards, which was a path of duality. And this he did for 100 years. It is mentioned here 100 years. It can be also, Shata also, it can be just many years, without yielding any result. At last, he surrendered to the Lord. That's what is mentioned here. Surrendered to God and meditating on His divine form, he moved outward from Bahirmukha to turned inward to Antarmukha, inside, entered into himself. After doing this, he was sitting purely in the Samadhi form. This is also similar to a sadhak, after doing various forms of Sakama Anushtana, could not gain the happiness because they were outward centered on material pursuits, and finally turned inward to God through Nishkama Anushtana and meditating on His form as Saguna Upasana, culminating in Nirguna Dhyanam called Nitidhyasanam. This is how we could see with the Vedantic input. In other words, it is switch over from ahankara pradhana atma, the doer I am, to absorption in sakshi pradhana sakshi pradhana atma, which is the nirvikalpa samadhi in as per the Kundalini Yoga, or as Vedanta we can call it as undistracted absorption, witnessing the mind instead of being the mind itself. This is the aspect of dhyana. This alone can lead to self-knowledge or self-realization. This is how we could see as the saramsa of this verse. Now we will go into the next verse. Verse number 5. Shatena parivatsarai dhrida samadhi bandhulasat prabodha vishadhi kritaha sakalu padmini sambhavaha adrishtachara madbudam tavahi rupamandardrisha vyachashta paritushtadhihi bhujaga bhoga bhagashrayam shatena parivatsarai dhrida samadhi bandhulasat prabodhi vishati kritaha sakalu padmini sambhavaha adrishta charamadbhudam tabahi rupamantardrisha vyachashta paritushtadhihi bhujaga bhoga bhagashrayam saha padmini sambhavaha khalu. That lotus-born Brahma indeed, shatena parivatsaraihi, for 100 divine years, dhrida samadhi bandhulla sat prabodha vishati kritaha, made pure, free from the taint of ignorance by the knowledge which dawned due to firm absorption in samadhi. Paritushtadihi, heart full with happiness. Adrishtacharam, never seen before. Adbhudam, wonderful. Bhujaga bhoga bhagashrayam, resting on a part of the body of the great serpent Adishesha. Tavahi rupam, thine own form. Antardrisha, with his inner vision, Vyachashta did see. Brahma, having become free from ignorance by the dawn of knowledge as a result of firm absorption in samadhi for 100 divine years, and being filled with the bliss, saw with his inner vision thy own form reclining on a part of the body of Adishesha, which was most wonderful, which he had never seen, which had never been seen before. It's a literal translation. Here, Brahma is addressed as Padmini Sambhava, born from lotus. As we said, lotus symbolizes the knowledge. The word Shatam means 100, and it can be also seen as many. It requires hundreds of years or many years to get enlightenment. Enlightenment cannot be achieved easily because one has to go into Samadhi, as it was pointed out. In Samadhi, one has to withdraw from the external world, from the various distracting objects. They are called, in the meditation term, they are called as Vijatiya Vrittihi. From Vijatiya Vritti, we come on the Sajatiya Vritti, on the Saguna Brahma. So that is called the state of dharana, concentration. Then bringing back from the Vijatiya Vritti, directing the mind towards Sajatiya on one particular form, resting in that for long period. That is called dhyana. Dhyana is called meditation. Dharana is concentration. So when in dhyana, the mind gets chitta ekagrata. That means it does not think of anything else and it thinks of only one. That's Saguna Brahma. That Saguna Brahma Upasana ultimately leads to Samadhi, or the absorption in that total form, Saguna, which later on becomes identified as me, the and the Saguna becomes as one, the Nirguna Brahman, where there is no duality, there is no triputi, there is no seer seen, there is only oneness, Sakshatkaram. That is termed as a Nirvikalpa Samadhi, or in Vedantic terms is also called as a Nitidhyasana. So when one reaches this stage, then only one can see the absolute reality which is totally settled. So the Brahmaji also did meditation in this manner, and afterwards, at the end of the meditation, his ignorance was removed. And the removal of ignorance, he could see the Lord. Here the Lord is projected as a Saguna Brahma Ishvara. The Ishvara, the Vishnu, reclining in the great serpent Adisesha. The word Adisesha also is here important. Adisesha also has got 1,000 heads, he said. So the infinite reality, Saguna, is limitless. The Adisesha also is limitless. Ishvara resting on Adisesha also can symbolized as the Ishvara as the Adhisthana for the creation, because Brahmaji is going to do the creation later with the knowledge gained from the Ishvara. Therefore, the Ishvara resting on, or Ishvara is the Adhisthana for the universe, is being symbolized here, and Adisesha is nothing but also the Amsha of the Ishvara. In this way we could see this verse, and we will see more in the next session. Bhave bhave yata bhakti padayostava jayate tata kurushva devesha natastvam no yata prabho nama sankirtanam yasya sarva bhava pranasanam pranamo dukkha samanaha tam namami harim brahmam. Narayana Akila Guru Bhagavan Namaste. Hari Om.